Hey Max, I'm so glad to connect with you. My evening, your morning, and another chance to talk. Each time we talk, and we get to talk every week, but each time we talk, I just find it to be so um, meaningful. I've appreciated these months of conversations as we have really tried to invest in each other and each other's understandings, and as you've invested a ton in mine as the new guy here. Um, but I've really appreciated just your mind, your heart, your desire for our participants, your desire for our sanctuaries, your comprehensive view on what meaningful work looks like, what growth looks like. And so just really thankful that we can have this conversation today and share with some other people about what we're doing around the world in our sanctuaries. So before we get started and all that, why don't you just introduce yourself, kind of how you came to International Sanctuary and what you were doing before you started with us.
Yeah. Good evening, Shannon. Yeah, thanks for being so gracious in your introduction. Yeah. So my name is Max. I live in Mumbai. I'm married to Jillian, and we have a daughter, Gabriel. She's 16. Before I joined International Sanctuary, I was a currency trader for almost 22 years of my life till 2012. And then we felt, my wife and I felt that we needed to be looking more at how we can contribute than just, earning. So I joined a non-profit then. I was on the board of that non-profit for some time earlier, and then I joined them, and I was with them from 2012 to 2017, working with prisons and remand homes and women in red light areas and their children. So it was in that area where I felt that women who were trapped in, trafficked and in sex work, they didn't have an option, an economic option for their life ahead, and hence they stayed back. And my thinking was how we could work on that front, and that's when I got to know about International Sanctuary in 2017. And so I kind of thought, yes, it kind of seems like the progression of my thinking and where I felt I was be called to kind of working. So I applied for the role for working in the India team in 2017, and I began there in December of 2017, looking after the India operations of International Sanctuary. Yeah.
And where was the organization at that time? Certainly, the work was birthed in India years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So you're kind of home base really for International Sanctuary. But the organization was expanding and has expanded. So where was the organization when you came on board?
So, well, we were with three international sanctuaries, one in India, one in Uganda, and one in Mexico. And we had the one in Orange County also.
Mhm.
I think at those times we kind of just grew our model to say that we want to impact. I think the heart was there on we need to impact more people, and seems like a good model to replicate. And so that process had begun. But so I think on a looking forward front, it was that desire was there that okay, let's do this and be able to reach out and have impact in the lives of more girls. That was great. But I think the birth pangs were, where the struggle was, where we have to rethink this model was the financial part of it, because that wasn't a very sustainable model that, okay, we have to sell more jewelry in order to support more girls. So that had to be rethink. So those were the pangs that were happening from 2017 onwards. So when I joined and I didn't understand it for the first year and a half as to what was happening, but then it became clear that okay, we need to rethink how we impact, not just our impact, how we impact, and not be so production focused, but be more service focused and how we're helping girls grow rather than help them produce. So that was
Yeah.
the change, the friendship that was made.
Yeah, and you've been so instrumental in, sort of developing that out, fleshing that out, creating an organization with a really full sense of program and desired impact, um, from including the economic empowerment that was so essential to the beginning, but really building upon that with some other things that have been really important to the thriving of the woman beyond our program. So maybe, so I think we described those as 4 pillars, and we've worked a lot on that language. There's some, some keywords and then some kind of outcome words that we've talked about. Maybe you could just share those or reiterate those
Yeah.
pillars and what they mean as far as trying to holistically help these survivors move to the next phase of their lives.
Yeah. So even as I mentioned that there was this change that had to happen, it was not about discarding the old, but it was about building on the foundations. So that was what we were doing. So the foundations were these 4 pillars of how do we know somebody is growing, and we have we monitor and work in their lives through the kind of pillars of income, community, health, and education. So it's are they growing in? So when I came in and we would be focusing on income, community, health, education, I was like, okay, that's great, but what do we want to grow them from here? Like, okay, income, what do we do with income? What was the outcome of growth and managing our finances well? So we put it as well. We should grow someone in security. So income should help her with security. Then probably health would help her with strength, mental and physical strength. Education would help her with her capacity, and the community would help her with confidence. So if somebody is secure, strong, capable, and confident, she would have a better shot at life. And I think you were instrumental in changing it from security to how are we growing a secure woman. So it became more personal. That it got sharper. So we looked beyond just the pillars to how are we working the outcome of the pillars, that we are growing a secure woman, a strong woman, a capable woman, and a confident woman. So it became the 2S2C program kind of like. So we're looking at someone at this place. Now, ideally, we would love all to reach that place, but all are not going to be at that place. So it is how are we having, so we have an individual development plan to make sure that we are intentionally working so that they have the best shot of reaching that place.
Yeah.
So that's how we kind of work that program out.
Yeah, it's not the same. It's not the exact same starting line. It's not the exact same finish, right? It's a place where they start, and it's a movement, a growth towards something more from there. Yeah. Even as Max, I'll say, even as you say that back, I know we kind of casually came up with that idea together about taking those pillar words and moving them into statements about the essence of the woman, right? A secure woman, a confident woman, a capable woman. And even as you say that, say it back, I just feel myself get excited, kind of, like chills. It feels really meaningful. So talk a little bit about that work. And certainly like that work has been transformed right during this pandemic period, as we've tried to figure out how to increase our sense of wraparound, or increase our sense of investment in those places where we've had difficulty doing production because of a whole number of reasons: shutdowns, logistics, sourcing, all the things that came with the pandemic. So talk about how those things have developed and kind of been furthered maybe in this pandemic time.
So one of the things I think, Shannon, was while the pandemic was not a blessing to anybody, but I think it kind of helped reshape our thinking when in 2017, 2018, and I was saying the first year and a half, we realized as an organization that we were too production centric and we needed to be more impact centric, outcome centric, and not just production. So the pandemic really helped us, put that program into urgent mode. That okay, we have to do. There is no option. There is no plan B. There is no production. So how do we work our outcomes now? Because for me, my thinking is shaped by Alice in Wonderland. A lot of my thinking comes from this one, part of the story when Alice comes out and she sees the cat sitting there. There are 2 paths ahead of her. And she asks the cat, where does this road go? And the cat asks her, where do you want to go? So she says, I don't know. Then the cat says, then any road is good. Right? So for me, it is always clear. So where are we headed? and thus you choose your road. And when you choose your road, then you choose your activities. So it became very clear the urgency of, okay, there is no option, production is shut. How do we continue walking down this road, maybe on a slower pathway, but we continue walking down this road with changed activities. So we focused a lot on activity, on community and education. So how are we making sure the girls are still confident because they've come from a traumatic background where they have been abused and locked up, and being in a lockdown could trigger off possible, thoughts and memories. And so we needed to know that they were confident in this time. So it was all the staff stretched brilliantly, keeping in touch with all the girls every day, as if we were meeting with them. So that the community aspect really grew, and the education aspect got focused across Sanctuary because we had to have classes on life skills, on coping mechanisms, on growing their capacity to be able to manage and budget and plan for the way ahead, because they suddenly, all the participants also were faced with the reality of, oh goodness me, what if this shuts down? What's my future? So, okay, here it is, you plan your budget. So that was good in working those outcomes, which became more real for them. And they were able to kind of start looking at their lives and investing in their lives to make sure they are more secure going ahead. So that was good. So we became partners in their growth rather than drivers of their growth. So that I felt that was a good shift that happened over the last 2 years. So, Shannon, one of the things which I'd like to say is, when I talk of drivers of growth to partners of growth, I try to be, in our thinking, if I'm explaining our program, our organization to somebody and they ask me, so what do you do? Now, there's so many things that one can say we do. But I think we like to say that, we reach out to a girl and she joins us saying, I don't know the next step. Can you help me? I need help. And our entire process is channeled. Our entire work, everything we do is channeled from taking that girl who says, I need help, bringing her to a place of saying, you know what, I can help somebody who needs help now. So that's the change which we want to make, to give her the shot at life. Is not to say, I know what to do in life. It's by saying, I am strong and confident enough and secure enough and capable enough to be able to reach out to at least one more person. So that's what we want to make the change to happen.
Yeah, I mean, how wonderful that captures a set of growth areas, right? Instead of saying, oh, look, this woman has gone from this level of education to this level of education, or from this poverty to this economic security, or from this lack of life skills to this group of life skills. To actually say there's something more profound than that happening. There's something that brings her in need and has her maturing to a place where she's giving, right? And how substantial that is really as a sense of transformation.
Yeah, I think that's the core. Because if a girl is a good producer of jewelry, you take away that production and she suddenly is crippled. If she's a good student and she finishes her education, she could be, when you say finish and she can't afford further education, it will be, what will I do now? But if she's growing in capacity, if she's growing in confidence, if she knows there is a family with her, we as a community are with her, if she knows that we are together, then she is able to take the next step. That's what we want. How are you always looking at serving? How are you always looking at taking the next step? Because there will never be an end to us being able to reach out to someone. Never be an end. So that's what we want them to think, that it's not about only me, but it's about how can I. So that's the way forward. And the pandemic has been an eye opener for us to see that without us saying to our girls, we've got multiple instances of girls reaching out to their friends who lost their jobs and helping them with food and sending money across through Google Pay, and so that they're able to manage. And we didn't know that. We got to know it when we came back, and chatting, and we were like, oh, that's really nice, because they somehow caught it and they acted it out. They didn't even, come to us with the problem and say what to do. They just said, we need to do something about it. So that, I think, was a wonderful outworking of this.
Yeah. So when you joined the organization, as you described, there was the organization was rooted already in India, where it had begun. It was growing and strengthening in Uganda. It had just launched in Mexico, and it was in Orange County. Since that time, the pandemic and other factors shut down the Orange County Sanctuary, and we launched a Philippines sanctuaries in Cebu City right as the pandemic began. So they're just finishing kind of their really long sense of opening, right? This elongated opening as they've launched and recruited participants. So tell me about what you have seen in the development of our sanctuaries and the development of our team over this pandemic time. Just what has happened there?
Yeah. So I think till pre-pandemic, we were talking a lot about how do we have more impact in education and community. And I think the pandemic made us, stop and reflect and say that if I say the word community, what does it mean?
Yeah.
How am I stretching out and being able to walk alongside rather than just say, well, from 9 to 5, I'm with you, from 5 onwards, I got my family, you got your set of problems. So it was more of, because the pandemic kind of blurred those lines of, okay, I'm at home and now I'm at work. So it was, are we there for each other during this time? So I've seen the staff really stretch, not just materially as making sure that people had things, but I know that staff we've been like really over because we are never employed for taking care of girls in this manner. We were employed to run activities within this time span in this geographical spot. So suddenly we had to reinvent. And I've seen the heart of the staff to serve go way beyond. I had to actually make sure that, look, weekends, please no answering. Please keep that time for yourself and your family, because I've actually had to do that. Can you remove your office email from your phone? Because it was the way they were stretching was, I was taken aback. I had to start drawing boundaries. So I think they've grown in making sure the community aspect is really there now, I would say. We genuinely not just want to do things for our participants, but we genuinely care for their growth. I think that's the community part. I think education-wise, all the sanctuaries have realized that we need to intentionally invest more time than we were, not just in academic work, but in life skills. How are we growing the girl to know she's confident? So like in Uganda, we began the program on business development. How are we growing the girl over a 1-year window to be able to plan for, invest in, look out for opportunities to start a business? And then we work with her 3 months as she works 5 days a week with us. Then over the 3 months, she'll come 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, and she gives more time to her business. So we kind of wean her off so she's able to stand on her feet. So those kind of openings have, I think the staff have grown in making sure that our role is not to run the sanctuary. Our role is to facilitate growth of the participants within the sanctuary. So I think that shift is, so that's wonderful.
And that's growth for us, right? I mean, that's just growth for our own understanding of what we're doing and how we can best serve these women, how we can best serve as many women as possible. Yeah. So this may be tough, Max, but can you think of, I mean, I know you have connection with so many of our participant stories. Can you think of a story that seems to really illustrate the transformation between coming in for help and transforming into a person who can help, wants to help?
Yeah. So I can give you one. There was when I joined in the India Sanctuary, because I'm more engaged with the girls out here because I see them almost every year. So there was a girl who very self-focused, wanted would invariably run out of money by the last week of the month and not have food and so we began making sure we always got extra food, just to make sure she didn't have that lack. And so I'm explaining this to show she was in need. But
Yeah.
she was also a very aggressive woman because she felt that the only way forward is to fight. It's not to
Sure.
ask to fight. So at
Her
one
whole
time,
life had been a fight in
yeah,
some ways,
exactly,
right? Or yeah.
exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. So at one time there was a whole shipment which there was the shipment got rejected because there was some fault in the production line, and so I had to take a call and say that, look, you know what, you're not going to be paid extra for this, but you need to repair all this work and send it back. And we were in a group, we were all standing, we were about 30, 35 of us, staff and participants all together, and I was talking to him. And she said, you know what, you don't care for us. All you think about is money. You're not bothered about our life. You don't listen. So I heard her and I said, fair enough. So the rest of the participants and the staff were quite upset. And after that we spoke and I said, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Don't deprive them of their opinion.
Right.
Challenge their thinking process, the opinion will change.
Yeah.
But challenge the thinking process. So I went to her after that, a week after that, and I said, okay, I heard you out and change my opinion. If you think that I'm only interested in money, change it. How can you change it? Show me that you are able, grow, and I will start investing in you. If you think I'm only interested in what you do, and if you think I'm not interested in you, change my opinion. And believe me, she began working. Now in the last year, from October onwards, she is working as, she takes charge of the inventory in the India Sanctuary. So she has grown from saying, oh, I need this. And not only is she taking care of the inventory and making sure all the girls have their material ready to produce, she is the highest producer of the sanctuary.
Mm.
And she's sitting her public exams. And she's grown to that level. So for me, it's a place of someone, arguing and fighting to draw attention to, you need to serve me, to saying, okay, I can do this and I can do that also, and I'm doing this also. And she has, for someone who was so much in need, she rented her own place. She's taken a place large enough, and she has opened her house so that others who may not have those finances, so they share accommodation. So she manages her finances well. They're able to save more and making sure other girls don't have to spend that much by splitting them. So she's kind of grown in that entire direction.
So great. What a great story. I mean, what a fantastic example. I mean, for sure, when we're frightened and when we feel an enormous sense of need, we can become defensive. All of us, right? All of us can become defensive and can be, not wanting to be generous or responsive in any way. And how fantastic to hear that she felt your intention and the intention and love of the sanctuary, and that really was transformative for her. I mean, phenomenal. Well, you are an amazing part of our team and a sharp leader with a great sense of the future. So you and I have talked a lot about what's next, and spent many of my mornings, your evenings, on calls talking about that. But just share a little bit about what is on your heart. Not a strategy, but just what's on your heart for what we do in the months and years ahead.
Yeah. Shan, for me, I think it's how, I think we all know this phrase of when the tide rises up, the boats all just go up with the tide. And I think for me that is something which, how are we growing capacity within the organization so that many, many more girls have a hope and a future. Yeah. Now, it's not about growing the organization. It's about growing the capacity of the organization so that many, many more girls have a hope and a future. It's not about producing more things so that there's pressure on the organization itself. It's about how are we having non-production impact so that girls have a hope in the future. So for me, it is, when we interact with the girls, Shannon, I sometimes ask myself, I talk to my wife and I say, I really don't know what makes them smile. If I was in their position, I would be the most grumpy person you could find because there is nothing to look forward to. But they are always smiling, they're laughing, they're joking. When we have lunch together, they are always sharing their food. They come with little, but they will never eat it alone. They will, pass it around. So when we sit down to eat, we just serve, and everything just goes around the room, and we sit on the floor and eat in India. And I look to myself and say, some of these girls have nothing, but they make sure that in case somebody's forgotten to cook or they've been too busy to cook, they're still there for lunch, and lunch is received. How can we have impact on these wonderful lives that give them, like they're a little more better placed to take on the challenges ahead. So for me, that's my heart. That's what I want to see happening, that we are faithful as an organization to develop a capacity. We are faithful in being accountable to each other. So that's the organizational part, to become stronger, so that there are many more girls who have a hope in the future. That's the way I look at it.
Amen. Let's do it. Well, I mean, Max, thanks for making time for us to talk formally this way and to share that conversation with others. I mean, that I do really appreciate our conversations in an ongoing way. And I just wanted to be able to share some of your thinking, some of your words, and certainly your heart with other people, allow us to communicate that. Thanks for all you're doing, not only there in India, adjacent to the India sanctuary, but in leadership of all of our sanctuaries, and that blossoming work and that connecting that's happening in our team, that maturing that's happening in our program. And I'm grateful that we could share that together with some others through this conversation. So
thanks, Shannon. Do appreciate our relationship and our conversations. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.